Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Sorry to turn my back to you over here. My name is Tom Approbato, and I'd like to tell you a story. Actually, I'd like to tell you a couple stories, but we're going to start this way. Welcome to my 5th annual Pauling Lake storytelling event. This one's entitled The Day the Earth Stood Still. Thank you for some of you who provided me some very positive feedback over here on what I should choose for the name of this event and what the topic should be. So this is kind of going to have a little bit of a sci-fi, fantasy theme feel to it. So to make it more appropriate for some of the sci-fi fantasies theme, I knew I had to do something a little bit different. So instead of a normal spring storytelling event, I had to do a couple of different things, and so I needed a little help in order to do this event. So I found some. Oops. Let me just...
State your name, rank, and intention. The doctor.
Well, let's start this over so we can see, so you can see it, not through my back. Okay? So, as I said, I need a little help in order to try and do this.
Rank and intention. The doctor.
You don't seriously think that this egotistical, maniacal son of a bitch is going to choose anyone but himself to help him in his storytelling event, do you? My name is Tom Approbato. I am the alternate Tom Approbato, or the alternate Tom Approbato, and I'm going to be helping that Tom Approbato tell these stories. I hope you're ready for this. Don't know if I am.
Well, we'll see. We're going to do a little tandem work over here together. So Tom and Tom, the negative Tom.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Tom.
Hi Tom, how are you? Looking forward to working with you today.
Thank you, Tom. I'm very happy to be here working with you tonight. Look forward to it.
Good. I think we're going to work well. We'll be fine.
As well, you should be looking forward to working with me. I do appreciate that, too.
Okay. I'd like to start maybe with the first story.
Would you like me to take the first story?
No, I'd like to take the first story, if you don't mind.
Okay. All right, well, I do mind, but I'll figure out something to do with myself while you're busy babbling over there doing whatever. I'll just sit here being bored.
Lovely. Thank you, Tom. So, while Tom is patiently waiting, this Tom is going to tell you a story. And the name of this story is called Escape from New York. Now, Escape from New York is something very meaningful for me because this is really about my entire life. My entire life as a child, always feeling a little bit different, a little bit alienated from friends and even from family, a little bit feeling more like an alien, as the case would be. So I kind of saw myself as, even at the early stages of 3 and 4 years old, as soon as I could speak, I saw myself as an alien, waiting. I knew that one day, absolutely certain beyond a shadow of a doubt, my true family was going to come back in their spaceship. They were going to land, and they were going to take me home with them, and we were going to have a wonderful new life together, and everything was going to be great, and everything was going to be absolutely incredible. Well, it hasn't happened yet, but yet being the operative word. But what I do have, and what I can say, is that I have a couple of very interesting stories, little alien stories happening when I was very young. In Brooklyn, where I grew up, we were in a city of, a few million people, kind of very much on top of each other. But my parents had bought a little house in the outskirts of Bensonhurst. And we had a very large, it was called a double lot. And our backyard was completely enclosed and private. We were right next to an apartment building which had these massive, incredible old vines growing on the side of it that you could pull and swing on those vines. We played Tarzan many times. But it was really, really fascinating, really very interesting just to see it happen. Because those vines took on a whole alien landscape. So we saw ourselves as something, someplace completely and totally different. I know, this one's going to be trouble, trust me. So, my parents used to let us camp in the backyard. So what better place to be? Put the kids out in the backyard in a tent, let them stay there and do their own thing, and it was just great. It was fine. They could just ignore us. So there was one time, though, that my brothers, my brother Ed and I, Ed's my older brother, so he and I and two other friends of ours were sleeping in a tent in the backyard. Now, this is, I'd say, maybe August, September, so it was still nice and warm and comfortable, but we like to be outside. And from our little enclosed area in our yard, it looked as if it was its own world. Because we had a fence, we had wall, we had vines, and we had a shed that blocked out the neighbors. So it got to be its own little place and its own little world. Well, kids drink a lot of soda when they're young. And eventually, regardless of your age, you're going to have to go to the bathroom. So I got up to go to the bathroom with my brother and his friend. They're all still up. We're still BSing. It probably wasn't more than 10 o'clock at night. And I stepped outside and I wandered over to one of the bushes because I wasn't going all the way 50 feet to walk back in the house to use the bathroom inside the house. Not when you're a young boy and you can go on a bush just as easy. So I went outside, and as I'm watering the plants, I'm looking up at the sky because from where we were, we had a beautiful view of the night sky. And as I'm looking up, I could see a round object with red lights on it, slowly making its way over. Now, this was not an airplane. This was not an airplane. This was not a balloon. It was too round, it was too big, and it was silently hovering over past us. I ran to get my brothers, well, I zipped up first, but I ran to get my brother and his friends and said, listen, there's a UFO up there, you've got to look. Because now I'm excited because I'm going home. I'm going home, I'm ready. That's the excitement for me. It's like, look guys, I'm out of here. And my brother goes and sticks his head out, looks up. Now, of course, what I'm seeing is over here. So he looks straight up and says, there's nothing there, you asshole. You know, it's only a 7-year-old can give you. And goes back in. And I stared and I watched it go as it disappeared. And it slowly floated away. And the funny thing is, New York, 1970s, feel free, go look them up. How many UFO sightings took place over New York City as identified by police officers, city council members, doctors, lawyers, who witnessed something that, we don't know exactly what it was. But they saw it, and I saw it. And the difference was between us, I knew they were looking for me. They just hadn't found me. They just hadn't found me yet. So, but I was working at it. Don't pay him any mind. But that never took place, not then. Another time though, I had a good friend of mine, Anthony Valentine, and he and I used to hang out, and I'd go over to sleepovers at his house. And we just did the typical kid thing. We'd hang out, we'd stay up all night, wait till the parents went to sleep, and then get yourself wired on sugar, and then stay up till as late as you possibly can, and try and scare the shit out of each other with as many ghost stories or fantasy stories or anything else you could come up with. But what I kept pushing to him was, I said, Anthony, I'm really an alien from outer space. They're going to come for me one day. They're going to take me home. And it might be tonight. So you add that fun and excitement to everything else, and you've got people that are sitting there going, you've got people that are actually sitting there saying, maybe he's serious about this. Maybe he could, especially if you get another 7 or 8-year-old involved. You can really, really egg them on. Except the thing was, I believed it. And I was ready. Now, one of these nights, we're there, and we're full of sugar, so no one's going to bed anytime soon. And we're having this conversation. And I said, I'm serious. They're going to come for me one day. The lights are going to come down, they're going to take me home, and I'm going to go back with my real family. So Anthony was a bit of he was a simple guy. He used that for a joke. Simple enough, anyway. But he looked at me and said, I really don't know if this is going to happen, but can you imagine? My favorite word as a kid growing up, imagine. And that was the thing, was I could imagine this happening. I could imagine leaving. I could imagine that ship coming down. Well, we stayed up, and we were watching the sky from the fire escape. Because, again, 1970s, Brooklyn, the kids are on the fire escape. They're fine. Because it's not like we consider any, possible hazard these days, They're right on the fire escape. You see them. All right, I'm going to bed. They'll come in when they're ready. Don't worry about them. And on this night, even in the bright lights of New York City and the bright lights of Brooklyn, we could watch the shooting stars come out. And one of them, one after another. And I kept waiting, and I kept looking, and I kept saying, maybe this will be the one. Maybe this will be the one. Maybe this will be the one. Maybe this will be the next one. Didn't happen. Yet. But I had hope. And I had dreams, and I had thoughts, and I said, this can very well happen. One day, to me, this is going to happen. Now I live up here. I'm not a New York City boy anymore. I'm living up in the sticks. I've got people that live up here that go, you live in the sticks. I'm in the boondocks. I'm up on a mountain in the woods, surrounded in the dark, but the incredible views. The sky at night, and I'll tell you what now, how many times I have gone, and how many times I've walked my dogs late at night, and I've looked out at the sky, and I have seen some amazing lights. I've seen what are definitely satellites, crossing in a very beautiful, orderly path, watching them tumble, watching them reflect, and it's the most amazing thing because they brighten up as they pass, but you can tell this is a satellite. And it just amazes me that we can see it just with our bare eyes. And I look and I say, this is incredible. But then again, I've seen a couple of other strange things. I've seen lights that are not airplanes. I've seen things that are not satellites. I've seen things that are flying way up high that I'm saying, oh, it's another satellite that I'm able to see up here. Isn't that beautiful? And then I watch it turn off. The Hudson Valley, the Harlem Valley, is known for its many different little UFO encounters. So, the way I'm thinking of it now is my real family is getting closer. Any day now, I have to get a little higher elevation maybe to get them to be there to see me, to get me ready, to take me home. Because what good is being an alien? What good is being alienated if you can't still hold out that hope that one day they're going to be back for you, take you home to where you belong, to where you need to be? Until then, I'm happy to be where I am. I'm happy to be with my friends. I'm happy to be with my dogs. And I've got a damn good life. But they're coming. I know they're coming. And they're going to be here before you know it to take me home. So if I don't get to see you and say goodbye before then, I want you to know it's been great, but it's going to happen one day. Thank you. It's not an easy thing to tell people that you're such an alien, but, you know, it's okay, and it does work out that way. Listen, one shouldn't drink and, you know, do this at the same time. So. Oh, sorry?
That's it from you people? That's it for the applause?
Oh, did we not pay attention?
That was a decent story, Tom. A nice introduction, a good flashback, a nice reminiscent of our youthful days and our childhood growing up. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for Tom. Thank you.
He's an ass. So,
I've got a story I would like to tell as well, or as part of this storytelling event here.
shocked.
Yes, of course, it's a good one, Tom. Thank you very much for your support in this endeavor. I'm glad that you're at least there to keep everyone well entertained while I just have to sit here and kind of pay attention to what you're doing or not doing, as the case may be. Anyway, I do have a story I'd like to tell. The name of this story is called Event Horizon, and I think you'll like it.
You sure you want to tell that one?
But what?
I just don't know if it's a little sensitive.
That's why we're telling these stories. That's the purpose of a storytelling event, Thomas, is that we tell stories that are both entertaining and real. In this storytelling event, The Day the Earth Stood Still, we're doing it because it's not just sci-fi, it's sometimes those moments in time that do capture us. So yeah, sometimes they can be a little sensitive, but that's why we're doing these things. And that's why I'm telling these stories, and this one, because I get to tell a little bit of the truth while you sit there and you lie to people's faces.
Oh, I lie to people's faces. Thank you so much.
It's a fair assessment. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Didn't mean to kiss my ass. No. No, that's fine.
Interrupt you there, but yeah, I do think it's a fair assessment. See, you lie to people, and I tell the truth. See, I might be the alternate Tom, the negative Tom over here, but that doesn't
Negative's a good expression, yeah.
to come up with something that's a bit of a false story here. Don't make me spell my drink.
Okay, good. Want to tell your story, or what are you going to do?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. You just sit down there like a good boy. You did that very well, and you can now be bored. Read a book. That's what I've been doing. So let me tell my story.
Okay, go ahead.
Again, the name of this story is Event Horizon. And it's an interesting story. So, my notes just in case. Yeah, this is what happens when you have a bad choreographer and a good storyteller working together. It's an interesting story. Event Horizon. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take you on a trip to Mars. Yes, Mars. Not the planet Mars, but Mars Bluff, South Carolina, in the United States of America. The year was 1958. The date was March 11th, 1958. And as an interesting story that took place, at this point, a United States Air Force bomber accidentally dropped an atomic bomb on a family's home in Morris Bluff, South Carolina. Although there were injuries, this was not the death toll that it could possibly have been. Fortunately, although the bomb was laden with nuclear and atomic material, the detonator was not active. So there was a boom, but not a big, big boom like it could have been. The fissionable material didn't go off, but needless to say, there were injuries. It was early 2000s when I was hiking on the Appalachian Trail, and I met an older man, probably in his late 50s, low to early 60s. And we just got to chatting as we were walking and talking, and it just seemed like he had something he wanted to tell. So he decided to share the story with me. And it was the story of his family in Morris Bluff, and exactly what happened to him. His name was Walter Gregg Jr., and his father, Walter Gregg Sr., his mother, his brothers, all lived in Morris Bluff, South Carolina. And this is his story as he told it to me. It was a cool early spring evening, and the family had been working on the farm doing their normal activities, their normal routines. Nothing seemed out of the usual, out of the normal, but they did have 2 small calves that had run off, and they hadn't been able to locate them. But again, that was nothing too unusual. They did their chores. Their mother was in the house, cooking, preparing food, preparing dinner for the family. And then the whole family came inside after chores were done. Darkness started to fall. They were sitting and eating and just relaxing, enjoying themselves. Everything was fine. Everyone was good. Dinner was going along. They ate. And as they were sitting there and they were talking, suddenly the entire house was filled with white and red light that just blew through the windows and underneath the door frame and filled and enveloped the entire home with white and red light. They lost all power in the house, and that just made the light seem even brighter. But at the same time, due to the power loss, they were also able to see within the next 2 minutes that the light was fading away from the house and moving away from their home and out into one of the cleared fields that they had. And as it was told to me, Pa grabbed his Remington, which he normally just used for hunting, and he went out to the door and he cautioned us all to stay inside while he went out and checked out what was happening, to make sure the family would be safe and to try and figure out what had come to Morris Bluff. But me being nearly 14 years old at that time and practically a man, the second man in the house, there's no way I was going to let my pa just run off out there by himself. So I let him get out the door about a minute and I followed right behind. And although Dad grabbed me and he scolded me, I think in the end he was really happy I went and joined him anyway. We went over and we were walking towards the lights. The lights had settled down out in the middle of one of our partially cleared fields. We could see a silver object out there, set right in the middle on a small hill. It had blue, it had red and white lights all on the underneath, on the underbelly of it, and the whole body was silver. And although we couldn't hear anything in the house, the closer we started walking towards it, we could hear a low hum take place. But as closer we approached, the hum got a little bit louder, and then the lights started changing color, and then amidst the red and the white, there suddenly came a blue light shining out from underneath. Pa shoved me down to the ground and held me there. He wound up covering my body with his own. He was trying to protect me from what he didn't know, and from what I couldn't tell either. But all I could see from the maybe it's an American ship, but it was scary, and we didn't know quite what to do. Well, Pa held me down, and then he said, "You stay here." And I felt him get up off me, and he stood up to get a better look. He was a little bit taller than me, so he could see over some of the bushes that were there, and some of the weed that we had grown. But Pa just kind of froze, staring at the lights. And then he started walking. Didn't say another word, started walking towards the lights, started walking towards the ship. That's what it was. I know it had to be a ship from Mars, it had to be a spaceship. Well, I mean, we were in Mars. It only made sense that we'd have a ship from Mars come there, right? And Pa just kept walking. I ran up, tried to grab him, but I made sure I kept my back to the lights because whatever was going on there, it wasn't good, and it had his attention too well. But as I looked back towards us, I could see Mom and my brothers were leaving the house, and they were walking in the direction of the ship. They were walking in the direction of the lights. The white lights, the red lights, and especially that blue light. And they pulsed, and the hum could just cut through you. I ran back to Mom to try and grab her and stop her from moving any further forward. She wasn't paying any attention to me. Her eyes were all glazed over. Same thing with my brothers. They couldn't seem to see anything. And they just kept walking forward. I turned back towards Pa, and Pa was still much further ahead of us. He was walking slow too, but he just kept heading towards the lights. And he had a little bit of a smile on his face, like he knew something I didn't. And then I stared at the lights. And I knew I needed to be inside that ship. I knew I needed to go. I knew that once I went inside that ship, every question I ever had in my head, in my life, was going to be answered for me. The lights told me that. The hum told me that. And slowly I could feel my legs start to move on their own. And I started to walk towards the ship. That's when the bomb hit. And the bomb hit straight on that silver spaceship with its flashing red, white, and blue lights. We got floored. We fell back. There was a boom that just knocked us all off our feet. Sand, dirt, and plants and everything just scattered all over us. Not 2 seconds after that, a second bomb hit. And that one blew our house to hell. We got debris rained all over us. There was wood and planks and dirt and everything else just smashed all over us. I got up and I crawled closest to Mom because she was closest to me. And I looked down and she had a big gash on her leg, but didn't seem to be bleeding too bad. The rest of her was just covered in dirty, just a little messed up, but she seemed okay otherwise. And I checked out my brothers, and my brothers all seemed good too. Except all their eyes were just glazed over. They just still couldn't see anything. They didn't react. But now I was worried about Pa. Pa was much closer to the big blast that went off. I went over, I dragged myself over to Pa. I wasn't hurt too bad, just a little banged up, so I was okay. But Pa, I was really worried something fierce for him. When I got there, he seemed a little hurt too, but he was breathing. That was the important thing. But his eyes were still glazed the same as everyone else's. So I held him there, and I put my hand on his neck and the scratches on his face and tried to clean his face off. And I sat there. Not a few minutes later, although it felt like hours at the time, I could hear the military truck show up. And before you know it, there were Army soldiers running all around us. They ignored me and my family. They ran straight up to that silver ship. They paid no attention to us. They had something in mind they had to go do. And the ship was just laying there now. Didn't seem too broken up, despite the bomb. But there were no lights, and there was no hum now. Not at all. So these guys are running back and forth, and they were trying to do all their stuff, and I didn't know what to do, so I just stayed sitting next to Pop. After a while, some of them came up, and I guess those had to be the medics. They came up and they started taking care of Mom and my brothers. And then they started walking over towards me and Pop. And one of them looks at me, and his eyes get all big, and he's wearing his old little coverall uniform. And he says, Major, Major, this one's awake. Now, some fella comes over, and I can only assume he was the Major. And he comes over, and he waves off the Army guy, and he looks down at me. I remember him exactly. He had this dark hair, and he had these bright blue eyes. The kind of eyes that just look right through you. Able to look into your soul. Just look straight through you. He looked at me and said, "Are you awake, son?" So I looked back at him, and I could tell this man was just looking right into me. And I shook my head and said, "No, sir. I am sound asleep, I think. I think I am dreaming." He looked at me and he smiled. He says, "Good man. That's the right answer." And then he got real up close to me. Put his arm on my shoulder and he looked right in my eyes. And again, I could feel those eyes just laying me bare. Those bright blue eyes looking into me. He said, "Son, a terrible accident took place here tonight. But you and your family are all right, and that's all that matters. You've had a very, very bad dream. And all of this will be better in the morning. Now why don't you go to sleep?" And I looked back in those blue eyes of his and I said, "Yes, sir, I think I will." And with that I went to sleep. Out. And I had a dreamless sleep. When I did finally wake up, I was in the hospital. I'm in the hospital laying there. Ma's over next to me. Her legs all bandaged up. But she looked happy and she looked okay. And Lord, she was just so excited and so disturbed. She said, "You just never believe what's happened, Walter. Your dad is fine. Don't worry, he's okay." She said, "An Air Force accidentally dropped a bomb on our house. Could you believe that?" She said, "We are so, so lucky that we weren't all killed when that bomb hit our house." She said, "They're going to pay for everything though. They're going to take care of us. All our medical's going to be covered. They're going to take care of the house and help us rebuild it. And they're going to fix some things. But it's going to take a little while because they got to do some cleanup." I don't think I've ever heard my mom speak like that before, but I said, "Okay. Whatever you say, Mom." When I talked with Pa and my brothers, I was just very, very casual, asking how they were feeling. And they all repeated the same story. "Wow, aren't we lucky? When that bomb hit our house, we were just so lucky to live." not one of them remembers seeing the silver ship. Not one of them remembers seeing those red, white, and blue lights. Not one of them remembers much of it after. They remember being rescued by the military from out of the house. That's what they remember. I figured it was best not to enlighten them. I figured it was best to keep the secret. And I figured that Major was still somewhere out there. I needed to keep quiet too. But time goes on. The official report from the U.S. military was that, again, B-47 bomber accidentally dropped an inert atomic bomb on a small home in Mars Bluff, South Carolina. And although there was no fissionable material released, there was still some time required, and the entire area needed to be quarantined so that everything could be properly disposed of and removed. By the time we got back to our family household, the house was gone, completely razed, level, nothing. Everything gone, every stick, every timber. They said they'd pay for it, and eventually they did, and we were able to rebuild. But our whole field had been stripped down, about 3 feet deep. Gone. All that ground, gone. They said they needed to make sure it was clear that there was no residual atomic radiation, just to be precautionary. But it went. You know, funny thing later, a few days after this, we were back visiting the homestead, the site. Those 2 damn calves came back again, wandering out, looking around, going, hey, what happened here? We went out for a little bit, but we're back now. What's up? Like nothing else ever happened. I've kept my quiet this whole time. But now Pa's dead. My brothers are still around, most of them. Don't talk to all of them, but Mom's gone, Pa's gone. Doesn't hurt to tell this story anymore. So of course I asked him, why me? Why would you tell this story to me? I think it's fascinating, I think it's interesting. But why would you tell me this story? Kenny had an interesting take on it. He told me, Walter Gregg Jr. told me, that, well, you're one of them storytellers, from what you tell me. No one's ever going to believe you anyway. He said, besides, he says, it's a strange enough story, as a true-to-life story gets, that an atomic bomb was dropped on Mars Bluff, South Carolina, in the United States, and most people don't even know about that. What if I was to add all that other strange stuff into it? That would be even more unbelievable, wouldn't it? Perfect for a story. No one ever believed it. Logic made sense to me. I was still shocked and amazed that he was willing to share this. But I asked him, I said, why me? Why would you tell this to me of all people? And he kind of smiled and he looked at me. And he said, I want to share something else with you too. It's not just a chance meeting between us. He said, when that major came up to me and looked me in the eye with those blue eyes that could just stare into your soul, I gotta tell you something now. Those blue eyes were the same color of the blue light that came out from that ship. They were the same eyes, the same blue, and the same color eyes that you have on you. They reached out, and he patted me on the shoulder, and he walked away. himself. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Thomas James Approbato Jr. My father was Thomas James Approbato Sr., United States Air Force. Major Thomas James Approbato Sr. And my story's done. Thank you.
Thomas, I gotta tell you, that was pretty good. Good story. Reminds me of something else.
Well, on that, I do appreciate your support too.
Good. That reminds me of a poem I wrote I'd like to share with you. It's called Masks.
Masks.
Yeah, masks.
You do really know a lot about masks too, don't you, Thomas?
Yes. Masks.
Why don't you read that? Oh,
I am. I am the mask of
you have
humankind.
emotions well, don't you?
For lack of a name, call me emotion. Many times I am forged. Many times I am
You
changed.
deceive all the time, Thomas.
I am worn for show.
And as you're reading to these people,
I am worn for play.
and as they're hearing you
I can
talk about
deceive.
your masks,
I
do
can
they
inspire.
not understand
I am power.
for one damn minute
I
exactly
am
what
higher.
you are? That
Words
you
can only
are
describe
a mask, that you've
what
done
I
nothing
once
but wear
was.
masks your entire life,
For I am fickle,
your whole life,
and even now
that you have become
have
that.
changed.
That is all you are.
I am the chameleon.
You become a mask.
I am
And
the changeling.
I am exactly
Despair
what
to
is
discover.
underneath. I
It is
am
not
what is
you who
left.
wear me. It is I
I
who wear
am
you.
all that is left from you and your masks.
You done? You done?
For now,
Thank you.
eventually,
I'd like to go on. I've got another story I'd like to tell.
I'm telling the next story.
I was going to tell the next story. You
I'm
mind?
fine.
You seem like you are.
I am fine.
All right.
The next story I'm going to tell
Okay.
is called Tin Man. It's the story of a heartless man. And that's something that I think you can understand as well. Thomas,
Oh, thank you.
you remember this one?
Yes, I do. I wrote it.
Once was a man made of stone. He lived on a planet where there were all other people made of stone. They had stone hands, they had stone eyes, they had stone hearts. All of them were completely stone. And although they were affectionate with each other, these stone men and stone women, these stone children, of course you have to be affectionate with each other if you're going to have stone children, I think. But although they were affectionate with each other, no one loved each other. It wasn't part of their makeup. The man we're talking about, the stone man, his name was Donor. And Donor had thoughts that were a little different. Donor's thoughts were a little unusual. Donor was different from the rest of his people. Somewhere in his brain, somewhere in his mind, somewhere in his body, through whatever chemical reaction would take place within him, his thoughts were slightly different. He didn't just see the world, he thought about the world. And although he wanted to be like everyone else, he knew he was different. But still, he did what he had to do. He made his continued and he lived his life. But Donor was different. He loved to look at the night sky. He would go out in the dark and just stare up. And from the light of the 3 moons, and from the light of the stars, he would just observe the sky, and he would wonder, and he would think about it. And it would make him have strange and unusual thoughts. It gave him what one would almost think of as emotions. It gave him a little bit of a sense of wonder, and that just did not exist in this world. So, one night, Donor was out, and as he was staring at the sky, and staring at the stars, and staring at the 3 moons as they made their way across the sky, in the nighttime sky, he saw what looked like some of the stars tumbling and moving faster and faster. And he watched them come and cross the sky and come close to where they were. And this was very unusual. Most people wouldn't look. Most of the stone hearts and stone minds didn't bother looking at the sky. It wasn't necessary. Sometimes they would look if it rained. Sometimes they would look if the winds were blowing up. But just out of interest, no one paid attention, except for Donor. A few days later, Donor was doing something else very unusual. He was walking across through one of the valleys. Now, his family never understood this about him. Although, in their own way, they were affectionate towards him. They could never understand why he would take the long way to walk home. It never made sense. The smartest way, the best way, the better way, was simply to walk along the rim of the crater and just head that way. He never went down into valleys. That didn't make sense. But he did. And while he was walking, he saw something that changed his life forever. He saw something shiny. Exactly. Shiny. Shiny was new. Shiny was unusual. Shiny did not exist in this world. Although they had greens, because they were plants growing there, and they had browns, because they were something what we would call similar to trees. There were blacks, there were beiges, there was stone, there was dirt. Refined metals? No. Shiny. In this case, it's something we might call silver, or silver looking anyway. This shiny called to him. And although he didn't understand this either, it was in a small crater. He couldn't understand that this had fallen from the sky, apart from being a star. So some star had now come to the land. The shiny from the sky is now shining on the ground. So he trudged his stone body over. He picked up the shiny. And he cradled it. And he stared at it. And his strange and unusual thoughts became even stranger and more unusual. So he covered it with his big hands. And he took it home, quietly, cautiously. And he went to his private sleeping area so that he could hide it. And then later on, when he had the opportunity, he was going to go and open it up and look at it. And that's what he did. Well, this silver, shiny object next to his heart. And that night he slept, and he had amazing dreams and thoughts and feelings. And this silver heart that he had, this shiny metal heart that he had put in his own chest, was now going to make him even more different and even more unique. The next day, though, when he came out to see his family, he came out strutting, showing his shiny silver heart right in his chest. And for the first time, probably in most of their lives, his family now felt something as well. They felt. Feelings were not new to them. They were something, though, that you are not supposed to have. Things that are supposed to be suppressed. And this was new, and not new in a good way. So they went, and they saw. They wouldn't touch, but they looked at this shiny silver heart next to his heart. And Donor's family became fearful. They became envious to a degree. They began feeling things they didn't want to feel ever. And they knew they couldn't allow Donor to have these feelings either. Donor's parents and his brothers reached out and grabbed him. They dragged him from the home and right out in front. While his brothers held his arms to the ground, his parents came over. And because they had affection for him, they reached down to his chest, and his mother and father ripped the shining silver heart out from his chest. Donor cried out just once, and then he lay still. His parents walked over a little further away, much further away from the home, and they took this shining silver heart and they threw it down into a crevasse, deep and dark, where it would never be seen again, and where it would never make them feel again. Then they came back to Donor, and he laid there with his brothers holding him, and he stared, and he was quiet. They put him to bed, where his slow stone heart slowly beat, and he slept. The next morning, Donor rose, and he walked, and he ate, and he always walked on the proper pathway along the rim. He never ventured down into the valley again. He never looked up at the night sky. He never looked at the three moons. He never stared at the stars. And if there were ever any other thoughts that were different in his mind, he never spoke of them again. And so, the man with the heart of stone, Donor, Cape Heartless. Thank you.
Thank you for that downer, Tom. Just to make it a little more difficult, but it was good. I appreciate it. It's a good story. Thank you. You okay?
Thank you, Tom. I thought that was an appropriate story to tell today as part of the storytelling event.
Kind of appropriate, yeah.
Sometimes the harder stories are the ones that have to be told by someone who's there but not there.
And you're definitely there, not there.
Everyone's back.
Yep,
All right, fine, thanks.
Okay, good. I've got another story I'd like to tell.
You have another story to tell, Tom. That's
Yes, I've got another story to tell. Thank you.
So I take it you're going to tell the last story?
Yes, I'm going to tell the last story. Is that okay? Yes?
No, please finish. You know what's best.
I do have the last story I'd like to tell tonight. The name of the story is called The Crow. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with crows. Crows in general are often known as being harbingers, sometimes thought of as harbingers of doom. Crows are also thought of as the messengers of the gods. Crows have always been those that could travel from one life to the next. They are outside the normal physical world. Crows are amazing creatures. Interestingly enough, a group of crows together are called a murder of crows. And perhaps that's because they are often seen on battlefields or brought in, they're found around dead things. So hence a murder of crows. It might seem somewhat appropriate for that. But, the stories about crows have been around with mankind for hundreds and hundreds of years. You familiar with the poem The Counting Crows? I'm not talking the band Counting Crows, which are also great. I'm talking about the poem, 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret never to be told. Now, it's interesting because if you really want to work this back, for the most part, that whole poem could be about somebody having a baby. 1 for sorrow. Well, maybe the baby didn't make it. 2 for joy. Hey, baby's fine. 3 for a girl. That's self-explanatory. 4 for a boy, which is also self-explanatory. 5 for silver. Maybe the baby's going to be fairly well-to-do. 6 for gold. Kid's going to hit it rich. 7 for a secret never to be told. The one part of it that sticks out like a sore thumb, the one part that just doesn't make any sense in that whole poem. There is also another legend, and it goes in a prophecy that revolves around crows. And this is the prophecy of the crows. Don't have it memorized, so I do have to read this. I apologize. In a place not far from here, in a time not long from now, a girl child will be born, and upon the event of her birth, 7 crows shall attend. And whilst the nursemaids are asleep, the crows will whisper a secret in the child's ear. And the child shall retain the secret unknowingly, for she has no language for speaking. But in her bones and in her soul, the memory will remain. Embedded deep within her core, the secret shall linger until such a time comes when the people of this world are ready to receive it. And on that day, she will speak it aloud for all to hear, and the world that is known shall end. Okay, well, on that light note, crows themselves are fascinating creatures. And this story that I have revolves around my experience with the 7 crows. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, as you've heard me say. And I had a friend of mine in high school who I was very, very close with. Her name was Christina. Christina was absolutely an amazing person. Over the top, high energy, poet, creative, intelligent, empathic, enigmatic, just a purely, overly, hyperly emotional person. And Christina and I immediately clicked. She was a fellow poet, and she would inspire me to want to do more and experience more. And throughout high school, as we got to know each other and hang out and spend more time together, she would just draw people to her. This high energy, this flame, her eyes, she had very, very light blue eyes as opposed to my blue eyes. She had very light blue eyes, hazel eyes that would just peer into your soul. And she could just inspire anyone to do anything. And she was always drawing people like mayflies to a flame. We had some strange and unusual times together. And it was odd, but not too odd, that as things would go, us spending all of this time together, us becoming so close, despite preferences that led otherwise, it wasn't surprising that I wound up in bed with her. It wasn't surprising I was one of many men that wound up in bed with her. She just had this ability to draw anyone to her. Women too. It's another story. But Christina was energy and life. And she could bring it to you. And she could inspire you and pull the most out of you. I wrote some of the best poems just in casual conversations with her. We would be chatting, and then next thing you know, we have pages and pages of poetry together. So high school was an amazing time for us. But with high school, I could just look into those eyes, and as many did, and in there you saw that she burned with an inner vision. That's something that other people also call madness. There was insanity there, behind all that love and all that joy and all that happiness. There was something definitely beyond. High school came to an end, and we were graduating. So what do you do when you graduate? You run around, you do something absolutely crazy. So, being kids from Brooklyn, we went to Prospect Park. If you've never been to Prospect Park in Brooklyn, it is an incredible place to be. It is the second largest park in New York City, and if you wander around there, even to this day, there are hidden grottos in Prospect Park, where you will find abandoned and hidden marble fountains, statues, benches, that are just overgrown and they've long since been forgotten. The water's long since been turned off, but if you look, you'll find them. So here we are, running through Prospect Park at night, 1987. So think of this, mid-80s, Brooklyn, running through a park at night. What could possibly go wrong? Well, I got lost. And I'd never been in the park at night by myself in any of these areas. So, I'm lost, and I'm wandering around, but I'm still feeling good about myself. Christine is off with some of the other guys, don't know where they'd gotten to. So, I'm looking, and there are some street lamps around to see in the park. You can see. There's a lot of shadow, a lot of darkness. But through one of these shadows, I'm able to see some reflective light. And what's in there? One of these hidden grottos. Marble fountain, marble bench. I walk in, past, push through the bushes, get through. It is gorgeous. It's pristine. You've got to figure no one's been in this area probably for 20 years. It's another forgotten part of the park. So as I'm looking around, I've decided I'm going to sit on one of these benches. I've got nowhere to go. I'm waiting for them. I don't know where they are. And I hear talking. So I'm looking around. I don't see anyone or anything. But I look up, and all around me are birds. Not birds, crows. And they're large crows, and they're all around me. And one of them speaks and says, "This one has come here unannounced." The second one says, "This one smells like her." Third one says, "This one has been with her." Now, I've had some strange things happen in my life, and I might have told you in other stories. If you ever encounter the Fae, the fair folk, elves, people call them fairies, be polite. I didn't know who or what these were, but I said, "I beg your pardon and your indulgence. I'm sorry, I must have come to the wrong place. I'll be leaving now." Well, the crows just came and landed themselves all around me. They said, "This one doesn't leave yet. You must leave her." Who? "You must keep away from her. She is not for you. Don't you know the story?" I said, "Again, I beg your indulgence. I don't know which story you refer to." They said, "Do you not know the rhyme?" So I said, "Crows?" He said, "Yes." So I recited, "One for sorrow," etc., etc. He said, "How many of us do you see?" He said, "7." And they laughed. He said, "It only sees 7 of us." But how appropriate. 7. There's a secret. There's a secret we put inside her. There's a secret not for you. There's a secret for someone else. You are not to unlock it. You are not to touch it. You must leave her. She is not yours. So then they recited this prophecy to me. And they said, "Do you understand?" I'm not stupid either. I said, "Yes, I understand," without having a clue. But it answered the question that I had. Something I knew that I was going to have to do. Something I knew that was going to be trouble. And I said, "May I leave?" And they acknowledged me, and they let me go. Sure enough, I ran into Christina and my other friends, not too far away, and there they were. I made sure that I didn't make sure it happened. Christina and I both just went our separate ways. It happens after high school. I heard she got married, she had kids. I also heard that she's doing well, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting to hear what comes next. I'm waiting to see what happens. I'm waiting to see how this story unfolds. And the best part is now I know where she is. And I can watch it happen. And I can see if the secret will be told. So, I wait for Christina, and I wait for the story to unfold, and I wait to see if the crows will ever come back. I'm counting. Thank you.
I was just waiting for you to finish. You finished over there. Didn't want to interrupt anything.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I was telling you, so.
I think this storytelling tandem event went very well.
From your perspective, you weren't here.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to have been able to do this with you. I can definitely say that.
It's been good for me too. I appreciate it. You've done well. From a distance. Sitting.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. I'd like to thank you. You've been an incredible audience. You take the time to come see me say, you were great as an audience. I was great as a storyteller. Tom was okay. You know, you got to go good to the needy finish up and let him wrap up over here. And I will say thank you very much. This has been a pleasure. Tom, it's over to you. Make sure that you clean up and put up and do all that other stuff over here. I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing and just enjoy myself now.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate everything that you did. At least you got the better end of the stick. Yeah, nice. Very classy.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you appreciate the efforts of my counterpart over here. I was looking for some help and support to try and see how this could possibly get done, but I had to call upon reserves to do it. I wanted to do something a little different, a little strange, a little unusual. Normally, me telling the stories is great, and I love doing that. But I figured we're doing something a little sci-fi, a little strange and different. Might as well make it somewhat interactive. And I did want to have this on a much larger screen, but, well, you know, these things happen. I still believe in the world of the fantastic and the amazing. I still believe in our little sci-fi adventure that we're going to have over here. And before the end of the night, you never know, like I said, if I don't get the chance to say it, if it comes landing down over here, that blue box over there is not a TARDIS, it's a porta potty. I'll tell you now, I've already stepped in it, I tried. You know, it's not big around the inside, and it's just awful. No, it's actually not too bad. But, you know, this has been part of my labor of love. I've been wanting to do this and do this as an interactive event for a while, so it took me a lot longer to accomplish this than I was hoping. But thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you for coming. Just so you know, I'm still working at it, and if at all possible, I'm trying to finalize them. My first 2 children's books should be coming out just in time for Christmas. So I'll give you further bulletins as they warrant, and there'll be more to come from there. If you've never been to it, please always visit my website at www.poetryismorethanwords.com. It's should be on your little list over here, on your file. That's it. Thank you so much. Please stay and enjoy. And